Commander Central, episode 348, and today we're going to be talking about poison, infect, and toxic in Commander. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I think my name's Chris.
Chris, welcome back. How you been, man?
I've been good. Could be better, but we're getting there.
You are getting there. You talked about some of your medical issues, and then surprise kidney transplant.
Yeah, it was definitely a big surprise.
Yeah, we got the message where you're like, I'm driving to the hospital right now. So
Yeah, that's pretty much what my thought was too. Like I sit down, just dish up my supper on my plate, and I get a phone call. And for those of you who have ever had family members who are through the transplant process, you know that you have to answer any phone call that comes in. So I saw it was from Rochester. I answered it. She went through the whole spiel, and I'm like, well, there goes my supper. And then kind of just threw everything into a big bowl because we had like pot roast and potatoes and everything, and it all went into one giant bowl, and we took off.
And then you, like the next day, you were, or was it even that night? You were having surgery.
7 or 8 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah. Wow.
It was definitely interesting. So the whole reason that it happened this fast for me, I'll share this with everyone, is this was a living donor, which means that someone decided they were going to donate. The recipient, who was supposed to get it, came in and they tested positive for COVID.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Geez.
So they had already removed the organ from the donor. So they only have so long of a time frame before the organ dies.
Right.
And so I got the phone call immediately and said I had to be there in X amount of time. So it was drop everything and go.
That's insane.
Yeah, so I guess honestly, it may sound horrible to say this, but if you're on a transplant list like that or something that's life-saving, you should probably look out for your health. That's the way that I've been looking at it.
Stay away from anyone.
Hey, shouldn't be going out to the bar drinking or, going out to some rave or something.
Right.
I'm not saying that's what happened, but just probably be thinking about it.
It worked out for you, so hey,
yes.
We'll take it. So now you now have 3 kidneys.
Yes, I do. That's another thing. I was actually telling someone about that last night, how the surgery went, and they're like, why did they do it in your stomach? I'm like, because now I'm, like a mutant. I have 3 kidneys. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, that's how they do it.
They don't take the old one out. Yeah, that's crazy.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that neither until, I got started the process, and I was like, that's odd. So
because most kidneys come from deceased donors, technically the average number of kidneys on people in the world is over 2, because there's more people with who have gotten a kidney transplant and have 3 than there are people with 1 by some small margin. But so there's the average number of kidneys in the world is slightly above 2 per person.
That is awesome. Yeah. I'm part of the 1% club now, right? That's how that works.
Right. Chris is messing up the math for the entire world of average kidneys. Well, cool. We're glad you're back. It was weird. So we had announced that we were shutting the show down, and we are gonna wrap it up on 350. And one of the reasons was you were having some health issues.
Yep.
So it had been kind of a little bit of a bittersweet announcement. Like, oh, it's too bad. And we recorded the show where we said that, and before it even aired, you're like, this was when you went in for your transplant. So it went from we're still going to wrap it up. We still have plenty of reasons to do so, but it's much less of a downer situation because you got that surgery and you're doing way better. So we went from it being a little bit bittersweet to, hey, the future's looking pretty good.
Yes, it is. It's looking wonderful. Now, I still got 6 weeks of healing before I can actually do something. So that's what I'm kind of trying to get through right now.
Yeah, you were stuck over in Rochester where you had got the surgery for, was it 3 weeks?
Yeah, just over 3 weeks.
Yeah, you came back just in time for the All Is One pre-release.
Yep, and I didn't even play in any of them because I was so sore still. I'm like, I am not sitting down at a table for
3 hours and dealing with all of it, yeah.
Yeah, and the other downfall to that too, I would love to go play Magic and all that, but with a transplant, you have a whole bunch of medication that you're on that actually suppresses your immune system.
Oh, sure.
So if I go and play, I have to really watch the crowd that I'm around, and I have to wear a mask because it's so easy to catch something. Now, if I'm just sitting here, BSing with you guys or something, face to face, that's different. But when you sit in a group, and there's 40 people around you, you're more likely to catch something than if you're just one-on-one with one person.
Yeah, and better safe than sorry given everything, for sure.
Correct.
Well, hopefully in a few weeks you'll be feeling a little better and we'll be able to get some games in.
Agreed.
So All Is One was actually a very fun pre-release. I really enjoyed it. And people came out for it, man. The shop was packed for most of the pre-releases as far as I could tell.
Yeah, that Friday when I came in, I think they said there was 56 people for their first pre-release.
That's
I was like,
crazy.
I know that they sold out of all pre-release kits before the weekend was over. Their whole allotted whatever they got, and
We're
they
gone,
usually
yeah.
have they get a lot, and they end up having like
Yeah.
a case or two to sell the next week. And nope, just they were gone before our
gone.
pre-release was done.
Yeah, people seemed like they were just really into it. There was a lot of folks who were like, "Oh, I haven't played in 2 years, and this is what brought me back too." Yeah, the Phyrexians and the storyline, the cards, everything. It was kind of a little bit of a sweet spot, and it was a fun pre-release. I had a really good time. The decks all seemed to play really well. Toxic seemed pretty balanced. It was always a situation like even in the Toxic decks I ran against where it was kind of a race to see whether they could get me to 10 poison or just take my life down to 20. It wasn't like lopsided like I think it sometimes felt like Infect was. So I thought it was very balanced. Kaya's the worst thing in the world to run against in a pre-release.
Kaya's been bad in every set she's ever come out in.
Someone drops a Kaya and like, I guess that's just never ever leaving. It's got hex proof and it's like they immediately roll it up to 9 loyalty or some stupid thing. I forget what it is, but like, and then the life total swings 6 points because they dome you for 3 and gain 3, and you're like, I actually scooped it up at one point. I like took 2 turns, and I'm like, I'm never gonna cut through this. I don't know how. There's nothing in this pre-release deck that's gonna get me through it. So let's just not waste time.
I can't even imagine, in Constructed with that card, like how hard it's got to be to take care of it. You're going to waste some of your resources on it. And the whole time they're just building up everything behind her.
Right.
And you're just like, ugh.
Yeah, ridiculous. But yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed all the games I played, and it seemed like everyone was having a good time too. So I'm looking forward to see how some of the stuff plays out in Commander. Well, hey, if you want to reach out to us and to tell us about how your pre-release went, or what it's like having only 2 kidneys, how'd you go about doing that, Chris?
Well, you can find us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube by searching CMDR Central, and you can also find us online at cmdrcentral.com.
Do we want to advertise Patreon?
Let's not. Yeah, we'll just jump into the main show topic.
I was like, that pause, I was like, are we going to do it? Or
So let's jump into the main show topic here. We're going to talk about Poison and Infect and Toxic and Commander. So first of all, we're going to go over kind of the history of this, and there's a lot of it. And if you're a relatively new player, you probably don't kind of realize how old various parts of Toxic are. Going all the way back to like basically the 3rd Magic expansion. Legends came out in June of 1994. It's 29 years ago. Almost 30 years ago now. And we saw our first 2 cards that actually referenced poison, which is part of both Toxic and Infect. One was an artifact called Serpent Generator, 6 mana, and it cost 4 to tap, and you put a poison snake token into play. This is a 1/1 creature, and if it damages your opponent, they get a poison counter. And as we know, if a person has 10 or more poison counters, they lose. So that was, first of all, that was Magic's first real alt win condition. I guess it's an alt loss condition, but yeah, I guess mill is kind of in the game as it was baked into the rules in alpha, but this is the first thing that was added into the game, kind of, that wasn't part of the base game, was a way to kill somebody without just damaging them or milling them out, and that was dealing 10 poison damage. Granted, it was a 6 mana artifact that cost 4 more to put a 1/1 with no evasion into play. I don't know how often that was ever relevant, but there it was. And then we also got Pit Scorpion in the same set, which is also a 1/1 for 2 and a black. Same thing. If it damages an opponent, they get a poison counter. 10 or more poison counters, the opponent loses the game. And I actually I'm so old, I was playing back then. I don't know if I ever saw a Serpent Generator, but I had a Pit Scorpion. I in one of the couple legend packs I cracked because it was a common. I cracked a Pit Scorpion and put it in a deck, and I don't know if I ever even got a single poison counter on anyone, let alone 10. But hey, I tried because I thought that was, at the time, that was like this amazing thing. I'm like, what a cool idea! We can give these people these poison counters. And so anyway, that's a card I actually had played with way back in the day in just like a casual deck with my friends trying to get poison on people.
Can we talk about the art on Serpent Generator? How it's like a meat grinder that's getting like lava poured in it or something.
You're pouring laws. Yeah.
The Play-Doh spaghetti machine.
I was looking at the art on this and I'm like, that's just not right. I don't understand how this works.
Yeah. I'm pouring lava into your bologna grinder, and instead of bologna coming out, it's a snake, I guess.
Don't Google this. I mean, you can, but thank you, Mark Teeden, for the art.
Right, exactly.
So the next time we got to see Poison was The Dark. A couple months after Legends came out, we got Marsh Viper. This was a 1/2 for 4 mana, 3 and a green. That's value right there, everybody. And then, like always, if it damages an opponent, the opponent gets 2 poison counters instead of 1. And then, of course, if you have 10 or more, you lose the game. Dang. And I thought poison counters from, like, Mirrodin were not that great. This is even worse.
Yeah, again, no evasion for a 4-mana creature. At least it puts 2 poison counters on things, but
Right.
what's weird too is it's like this is back in that point in time when it's easy to forget about how kind of tribal themed decks work today. But like back then, you had Zombie Master that was an alpha that gave zombies Swamp Walk and I think Regeneration, and there was like the Goblin King that gave zombies or gave goblins +1/+1. So there was like a couple of those Lord kind of effects, but there was only 1 or 2 creatures that cared about them, right? So like if you wanted to build a zombie deck, you had Zombie Master and Scathe zombies that were like a 2/2 vanilla, and that was it. And if you want to build a Merfolk deck, there was Lord of Atlantis, and there was Merfolk with the Pearl Trident, and that was it. Like you had lords that indicated that you could build that kind of a theme deck, but there weren't really very many creatures of the type that those lords cared about. It took years and years to get many of them. So like, yes, you look at this and you're like, well, there's only 3 Infect things, but that's just as many of, like literally at that point in time, that's how many zombies there were for a zombie deck. That's how many Merfolk there were for a Merfolk deck. So really,
and that's
this
what we call foreshadowing.
Right, yes. So, a lot of this stuff takes years and years to build up, but that was true of everything way back in the day.
The one thing I got to say, if you notice, as we talk about these early cards and everything, they were all built around creatures that could kill you in real life. So like
Sure.
a marsh viper,
Sure.
the snakes, a scorpion, stuff that was actually like poisonous in life that would kill you. So that was like how they're themed with it, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, because they didn't, Death Touch wasn't even a keyword, but they had kind of the equivalent of it on things like Thicket Basilisk. And I think this was their way to differentiate between that kind of like kill a creature effect and things that kind of had poison, like you'd see from a scorpion or snake. So yeah, I think this was their attempt to kind of differentiate those two things.
Yes. So we'll move on from the old Marsh Viper, this wonderful 4-mana 1/2, kind of reminds me of the spiders I run in my deck. And we're going to move on to something that is, just as nasty, and probably kill you too if they're given the chance. And this is leeches. Now, this one comes out in Homelands, which came out in October of 1995. So let's see, what is that? That's a whole year later before it came out from the looks of it.
Yeah.
So this is the next time that we hear anything about the poison. And Leeches reads, target player loses all poison counters. Leeches deals 1 damage to that player for each poison counter removed this way. Pretty cool card and all that. And guess what? This card is in white. It is 1 generic and double white to play this.
And it's a sorcery.
Yes, a sorcery too. It's just like, like I like the idea, something that removes it. And then, you deal the damage, back at them. But since this card, we haven't seen anything else that does this.
Yeah,
like there's nothing.
There's nothing that removes poison counters at the very least.
I've been an advocate for cards that remove stuff like this, that remove like commander damage or remove like emblems. I've been an advocate for them to start printing something like that, because having that little bit of an aspect that can never be stopped is kind of annoying in a game. But then again, having it as well is also, something that keeps other things in check.
Right. Yeah, this is also out of the blue, and it's not out of the blue, I guess, because it's probably because of Toxic, but this is like a $15 card now.
Doesn't
it's
surprise
like the
me.
second best card in Homelands next to Merchant Scroll.
Fair. Yeah, that's a pretty rough set. I do like that it's targeted too. So, I mean, conceivably, at the time, probably if you got a few poison counters on someone, but you weren't going to get enough, you're like, I'm never going to get to 10, you could maybe put it over the top for damage. Oh, they're up to 4 poison counters. I'm not going to get 10, but they're at 5 life. If I can sneak 1 through, I can hit them with leeches and pop the last of the poison counters off them, because it doesn't have to just target you.
Yep.
I don't know how relevant of a strategy that really ever was, but
yeah, the cool thing about this is that this again is another card that based off of real life type of medicine. Back in the day, they used leeches to try to take out, toxins out of the body and whatever else. So I do enjoy that a lot of these old cards were based off of things that actually happen in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of fits kind of that the dark / Homelands was like in Magic's past. So you're dealing with, the Dark Ages when like everything is pretty archaic and functioning like the medieval times. So yeah, that makes sense in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they should have made a rat then, that was running around with the plague that had like poisonous 12
Well, I mean,
or
literally,
something.
right? Yeah, I don't know why the rats. I think back then they were kind of doing that. If there's one, they buff each other, kind of like slivers do, because we had plague rats and stuff. But they
Yes.
did not do any kind of disease or poison stuff.
Yes.
So next, when we get into alliances, that's where we see Swamp Mosquito, and basically over the next couple sets, we get 4 more different poison creatures. So Swamp Mosquito actually has evasion. It's a 0/1, but what's relevant about that, number one, it's the only thing that we see. The rest of these poison creatures have all just been like 1/2s or 1/1s with no evasion at all. At least this has flying, so it can punch through. That's actually pretty relevant. And Sakatwa Assassin, which is in Visions, has fear, basically. It has since been keyworded as fear. At the time, it just does what fear does, but they've since gone back and changed it. What's relevant here is Sakata Assassin, Swamp Mosquito, and Crypt Cobra is one of these as well. They've also changed it here. It says, instead of saying it deals combat damage and they get poison counters, in this case, if the creature is attacked and isn't blocked, they get the poison counters. So like Swamp Mosquito is a 0/1, but it doesn't have to deal combat damage. It just has to attack and the person doesn't block it, and they immediately get the poison counter. Again, I don't know how relevant that is, but like that's a change they made to maybe make poison slightly easier to get onto people. So even then, like if somebody fog doesn't stop it then. You can swing through with these things and someone fogs, and it doesn't matter, it just wasn't blocked, so they get the poison counter. And actually I kind of like that. We see a lot of attack triggers now in Magic. I wouldn't mind seeing that kind of thing applied instead of like on attack, instead of it's not blocked. But I mean, I'm not sure how often that's relevant, so maybe that's why they've moved away from it. But and also it's weird because you have Sabertooth Cobra and Crypt Cobra in the same set, and they're both cobras, but they function differently. The Sabertooth Cobra does require damage, and the Crypt Cobra doesn't. And they're both snakes in the same set dealing with poison, and they function slightly differently. And who knows if that was intentional or because it's way back in the day that could have been an oversight. I have no idea. And then we don't see any poison for a while, do we?
No, we go all the way to what? Future Sight. Wow, 10 years later. That's a decade between Visions and Future Sight. It pops up with the new keyword poisonous, so like toxic in All for One, it has a poisonous in a number, and when that creature deals combat damage to the player, they get that many poison counters, so 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. The first card we see is Snake Cult Initiation. This is an aura for 3 and a black that gives the enchanted creature poisonous 3. And we also got Virulent Sliver, and it gives all slivers poisonous 1. So always something fun to see in a sliver tribal deck, right, Chris?
No, not at all.
Did you ever run that in your sliver deck, Chris?
No, I didn't, because I found it too easy to win with it. Like,
oh, sure.
Slivers there's quite a few slivers that have like baked on things where you can tutor up other slivers. And if you have like 10 slivers out and you drop this guy and they're all unblockable or something, you're just like, take out one guy and all that. I mean, it was too easy to win with that rather than trying to dish out 40 damage per person.
And Snake Call Initiation is interesting because it gives the creature poisonous 3, but that still means you need to hit somebody 4 times basically, unless you have some other way to give poison counters, because 3, 6, 9, and they're still fine at 9, which actually probably goes to show how safe they were being with the previous poison stuff, because the biggest thing we saw prior to this was 2 poison counters at once. In this case it's 3, and you can put it on any creature no matter how evasive or powerful or whatever it is, and this card still wasn't a problem. I mean, it was like almost more of a much of the stuff in Future Sight, it was just a goofy callback to a previous set or a call forward, something they wanted to do, and it wasn't at all powerful. I've since ran it in a few decks just because I think it's a cool card, but like it's also very safe.
Yes.
So, I mean, it wasn't until we got up to Mirrodin where things kind of escalated a little bit, I guess.
This is when they screwed up. Let's just all be honest. This is when they screwed up. This is that when they were in the meeting, you see that meme and they're all like, oh, what about this idea? And what about this idea? And the boss is like glaring at him. And then the one guy, oh, how about this idea? He's like, that's awesome. We go with that. And it was like, that was the worst idea of them all. So, yep, the next card that we see is Tainted Strike, and this one comes out of Mirrodin, was that September of 2010, so Scars of Mirrodin, pardon me. And there are 3 cards overall within the set that feature this, right? 1, 2, 3, yep. And everybody knows Tainted Strike. So, it's a 1 mana instant in black that target creature gets +1/+0 and gains Infect until end of turn. We've talked about this card numerous times. We've had experiences with this card. It's just overall a fun little addition to any type of black deck that you can have, because you can target anybody's creature and just take out one player.
Yeah, the fact that the Infect the way Infect works, because it scales with the creature's power, was where things really kind of went awry, basically.
Yeah, because like literally, if you look at Infect, so this is Scars. I do believe, I could be wrong in my time frame.
That's Scars, yeah.
But before this was when Shadowmoor and all that came out, correct?
Yeah.
If I'm in my time frame, okay. So that's when Wither came.
Yeah.
And what it looks like is that they combined Poison and Wither together to create a new mechanic in Infect.
Right.
So, because Infect, when it deals damage to a creature, it deals damage in the form of neg1 counters, which is what Wither was.
Yep.
So, I mean, overall, it seemed like a good idea until, you get some professionals out there that are like, nope, we're going to break
Exactly.
this right now.
Yeah, so now I guess the way they thought they would make that safe is Infect replaces damage. So, like, if you're, getting hit by a creature, it's a 5/5, well, it's dealing you 5 poison counters, but it's not simultaneously dealing you 5 damage. Where in the past, things that dealt poison, those things stacked, it would deal the 5 damage and it would put 2 poison counters on you or whatever it is. So they had Infect replace damage, but I don't think that at all offset the fact that it would scale with like giant growth or whatever things you want to throw on a creature.
No, I don't think they thought that far ahead.
They also had some cards in the set that like added poison counters just outside of Infect as well. Things like the one I have here for an example, but there was a few of them. Relic Putrescence, which I don't think ever saw much play, but it's 2 and a black, and it's an artifact enchantment, or artifact aura, excuse me. Whenever the artifact becomes tapped, its controller gets a poison counter. So in addition to the creatures that like had Infect that deal poison, there was also things that just gave you poison counters that were baked into this set as well, and it wasn't relying on a creature to deal damage.
Yes, which is pretty cool because then it allows you to set up like the poison counters and stuff like that. For instance, I'm not sure when the other mechanic comes out, which is called Proliferate. I thought it was somewhere right around in this.
It was in the
block
same
era.
exact set. It was in Scars as well.
Yeah, so this would be, you set it up and then you can start proliferating those counters.
Yeah, so Scars was the first time we've seen Proliferate, which aside from leeches is really the first way you could like interact with a poison counter.
Yep.
In this case, you can add them, you can't remove them, but like I think there were 5 different cards in the set that had Proliferate, and we've since seen that in a bunch of different sets,
God,
including the current
every
one.
Set. Yeah, almost every set at least has one card with Proliferate on it.
There's been a lot of them over the years for sure. And really, it's a cool mechanic. I like Proliferate. It's just really, really powerful with poison.
Oh yeah, speaking of Proliferate, how about the next card on the list? I didn't even
Right.
scroll down that far.
Yeah, so like there was a bunch of them in their Contagion class, Contagion Engine, things that like just in addition to they also work with the Wither counters, right? So
Yep.
Everything that Infect did, Proliferate worked with.
Now, I think Planeswalkers came out right around here too.
You got them right before this, and yeah, in the lore one.
So here's let's start proliferating the counters on Planeswalkers. And I don't know, like I didn't play a whole lot during this time frame, so I don't know if that ever actually was a thing or if that didn't start till later when there was more of a bulk of these cards.
Yeah, I wasn't around then either. I guess secondhand, I've heard people talking about how absolutely dominant Infect was, at least in the standard of the time. I don't know if the Proliferate was part of that or if it was just, giant growthing up whatever your creature is and just doming people that way. But in Commander, for sure, you see a lot of that where like the person's trying to put poison on everyone a couple times and then just roll the Proliferate effects up to hit everyone simultaneously.
Yeah, because there was no way of removing it. I mean, honestly, if I saw people start playing more and more Infect or Poison in the store or anything like that, I'm definitely going to go out and buy some leeches and jam it in every white deck I got.
And this was a full block too. This was like back when you had 3 sets. They were all kind of interlinked. So like it wasn't just Scars.
No.
Yeah, so after Scars, we got Mirrored and Besieged, and we got more Proliferate stuff, or more poison counters. Specifically, Decimator Web is a 4-mana artifact that you can pay for and tap to make target opponent lose 2 life, get a poison counter, and mill 6 cards from their library. Dang, that's mean.
So, you look at this card right here. 4 mana for this, 4 mana and tap. So this is, what is the first one we talked about?
A Serpent Generator that costs 6.
Yep, 6, and then a 4 and a tap to create a 1/1. And this one just does the same thing, just much more efficiently, because it does more than just that.
Yeah, you're milling the person, they're losing the life, they're getting the poison counter. Yeah, it's all right there on this one artifact. So, and that's in addition, we got this kind of stuff. There was more Infect creatures in this set. There was more things that poison, there was more proliferate, and this just continued.
Oh, yeah, this continued right into one of the probably most powerful Infect cards that you see. It's played in Modern, it's played in Legacy. I'm not sure if it's played in a Vintage. I don't know if they play Infect in Vintage, but if they did, I guarantee this is probably in there somehow, some way. And that is Blighted Agent. And if you guys don't know what Blighted Agent is, it's a 2-mana 1/1 with Infect, and it cannot be blocked. And it's just
crazy.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. You also got Lost Leonin in white. I don't remember the exact wording on it. I think it's a 2-mana 2/2.
Yeah, 2/1, I think. 2-mana 2/1.
And I think it just has Infect. I don't think it has anything else on it. So, I mean, it's not great by any means, but, 2-mana efficiency is really, really good.
And it was kind of showing, too, like, prior to this, all the poison stuff you had was in black or green. And then even in this set, the Infect stuff was primarily in black as well, and in green. And by the time we get to New Phyrexia, where, like, you're seeing the storyline progress and the Phyrexians taking over the plane, now there's Infect in every color. So, like, by the end of the block, we've seen that basically the Myrdans have lost, the Phyrexians have won, and now the infection has spread to every single color in the plane. So, Blighted Agent, Lost Leonin, which is really, really interesting.
I do like the story of it, because Infect, it's meant to be powerful. Once you're infected, you're just you're done. So, I mean, I understand why Infect's so powerful, but it's such a mistake.
I guess their one answer to it was also printed in New Phyrexia. That was Malaria, Sylvok Outcast. So if she's a 2/2 for 2 mana, you can't get poison counters, but she doesn't eliminate the ones you already have. You just can't get them. Creatures you control can't get -1/-1 counters placed on them, so it turns off the Wither component of Infect. And creatures your opponents control lose Infect. So that was the answer to Infect. But that, I guess, primarily became a combo engine with stuff that had Undying, or not Undying, Persist. So like that's how that got used. It really wasn't an answer to Infect so much as it was a combo card.
So at the time when Infect was big, what was the other? There was a whole bunch of other combo decks in Modern that were big. One of the combo decks was actually Malaira with Devoted Druid to create infinite mana, to do something dumb, and then go infinite with the 3-mana guy that when he dies, he returns and you gain 2 life or something like that. So then you gain infinite life. And I was just like, I saw this deck once and I'm like, how do you win? This is dumb. I don't understand this.
Yeah. There was a pod deck that used her quite a bit too, a birthing pod deck. Yeah, I mean, so that, yes, it deals with Infect and it stops you from getting poison counters and eliminates Infect, but like that's not, particularly in Commander, you're not going to run that in your deck just on the off chance you might run into someone playing poison or Infect or something.
Yeah, well, for me, I was playing Infect at the time. That was like my go-to deck because it was one of the most powerful decks, and I had top 8 quite a few tournaments until I ran into this deck, and then I'm like, well, that's adorable, and because you have no removal in Infect, and you're just like, well, okay, cool beans. I'll try to beat you with this not this devoted druid, but Noble Hierarch. I guess that's my game plan.
So after all that,
holy cow! Okay, yeah,
we take a long jump, guys. Another decade, I think, between New Phyrexia and Kaldheim. Kaldheim, we got quite a few things that reference poison counters. We got the new Vorinclex. That doubles counters. It doesn't, I don't think it specifically says poison, but
you can interact with them at least. Yeah.
But the one that does is Finn the Fangbearer. This was a legendary creature, Death Touch, and whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that person gets 2 poison counters. So a little bit of a callback to the Marsh Viper from way back in the dark, and now it's metamorphosized into a Viking warrior, so that's cool.
Yeah, that was a fun throwback, and again, it just goes to show how conservative they were with poison originally, outside of Infect, because again, Finn, people built Finn decks, but it was by no means broken, even in Commander. Yeah, it gives your Death Touch stuff poison, but that's still a lot to have to put on people, and I think that was a really solid balance, and it was nice to see that actually come back kind of out of the blue, although it was kind of an indicator of things to come, since this was also, I think, the start of this whole Phyrexian arc a little bit. That we're currently right in the middle of. So, it was a bit of a foreshadowing, even though Finn doesn't really have anything in particular to do with the Phyrexians, but just introducing the mechanic again was a nice little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah, I definitely think it was like a playtest card type of thing. Like, we're going to put this in and we're going to see what happens. And if it is broken, then we need to go back to the drawing board and figure something out.
Exactly.
So, let's see. We go from Kaldheim to our next one, which is another one-off, and I don't even remember what set he is from.
Dominaria United, yeah.
Wow, that's, 8 sets or something like that? That's a jump? Something like that?
Yeah, feels like it.
Yeah, so this is appeared in 2021, so 2 years ago. And this is a Johnny Sleeper Agent. And as we said, it was printed in Dominaria United set. Now, Johnny also brought back with him, maybe this wasn't the first one. I don't think it was. But they brought back the Phyrexian Mana with this. So a Johnny has one generic green, and then we have a Phyrexian green or a Phyrexian white, the hybrid cost one.
Yep.
And then a white for a legendary planeswalker with 4 loyalty. And instead of calling it like Phyrexian Mana, they call it completed or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They should have just called it Phyrexian Mana because everyone knew what that was. I
Right.
don't understand it, but that's fine. But when he comes in, he enters with 2 fewer loyalty counters if you paid the 2 life, correct?
Yes.
If the 2 life was paid. So he would have come in with 2. So got 3 abilities. A +1 is reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, put it into your hand. Otherwise, you may put it onto the bottom of your library. So typical Johnny ability.
Yeah.
-3, distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among up to 3 target creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. Another typical Johnny ability.
Yep.
And then -6, you get an emblem. Remember emblem. Remember what I said earlier? We should get rid of these things.
Yes.
And the emblem reads, whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. So
Hey, poison is back.
Yeah, in all theories, this is going to cost 3 mana to play. So turn 3 with 2 loyalty. You +1 it to 3 loyalty. So it'll take a while if you're going fast. Otherwise, if you're playing slow, it might be a little bit faster to get up to 6 loyalty plus proliferate. But I don't think white has a whole lot of good proliferate. Green might have a few of them.
Yeah,
but
there's a couple, and there's a couple in green as well.
Yeah, so it's not going to be like it's a broken card by any means. So, I mean, definitely they were playing conservative with this. They kept the first 2 abilities very key on with what a Johnny does, but the -6 for the emblem is definitely a Phyrexian ability.
Yes, very much so.
And then let's fast forward just a little more to today in February of 2023.
Yep.
Where we got all Phyrexia All Will Be One, and one of the most notable cards from that set is Venerated Roto Priest. This is a single green for a creature. It's a 1/2. It has Toxic 1, so if you do attack with it, you can get that poison counter in. But it also says, whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter. Why didn't it just say proliferate? Like, we got the one in War from the Spark, when you play a land, you proliferate. Why doesn't this just say proliferate?
I guess the thought is if they don't have a poison, and if they don't have a poison counter, it will let them get one, and and they don't want it to interact with planeswalkers maybe too. But like if you're playing, some infect stuff as well, and you want those giant growth effects, well, you're going to give them a poison counter as you buff up your
you are
Verdian Reveler or whatever.
I really think that this card replaces the 1 mana elf in the Infect
the Glistener
deck.
elf. Probably, yeah.
I mean, a no-brainer. It's a 1/2. Granted, that 1 toughness really doesn't mean a whole lot, but to just go pump like 5 times and put 5 poison counters on you, and then just, what you gonna do now? Go for it, kill it. I don't care.
I don't know if it'll replace it. I guess I'm no modern expert either, but the nice thing about Glistener Elf is if you hit it with a giant growth, it puts 4 poison counters on somebody, whereas this is still just going to do 1. But if you have this in the deck alongside, like, because you don't want to, like, having 4 Glistener Elves, though, probably doesn't do you that much good because you can really only buff one of them up for the most part. So this probably does still go in the deck, though, I'm going to guess, because then when you buff up that one swinging through, they'll get additional poison counters from the Rot Priest.
True.
Just putting them on for you doing your thing.
I was thinking of the other route because there's so much 1 mana removal right now in Modern that people are playing, that this is, you cast the first spell, trigger the ability, and then they're in response going to kill it, and then you just blow your hand into it to put all those poison counters on it to just set them up for, okay, now you have X amount of time to kill me or have X amount of removal, and I just have to hit you 1 more time. Right. Type of thing. And just like set it up where the game's pretty much in lock, where you just have to find one thing, whereas they have to have the answer to everything.
Yeah, and I guess this has only been out a week, and so, we'll have to give it some time to play out. But, like, this is probably the strongest. We're talking about Rot Priest because it's kind of been recognized as probably the strongest of the Toxic cards, and it still seems like it's relatively fair compared to, some of the Infect stuff we saw back in the day.
Agreed. Now, there was another mechanic that came out, and that was called Corrupted, and it simply, allows a thing to happen if your opponent has 3 or more poison counters. I don't have any key cards I can tell you exactly which ones do what or anything like that. I haven't really looked too hard into the Phyrexia, new Phyrexia, or whatever this is. All is one set, so, But that is one of the other new mechanics that's actually playing off of poison counter, so you can do something else with it.
So what that, I don't remember even the name of the cards, but like I encountered, our friend Tom was playing a Golgari Infect deck or Toxic deck at the pre-release, and I wound up having to play him. And there was like a couple black creatures that were like, this creature gets +2/+0 and Death Touch if your opponent's corrupted, and like this one gets Trample and +1/+0 if your opponent's corrupted or whatever. So it turned into this mini game where I was trying to, like, he'd swing with a couple things, and I was making sure I blocked the stuff that had poison, and while taking more damage from other things, because because I didn't want to get corrupted, because that was going to push so much of his stuff over the top.
Yep.
It actually made for a lot of kind of a fun gameplay, because like we're having to whereas he's trying to like poke through meaningless toxic stuff just to get 3 counters on me, because that would like make so much of his stuff that much more powerful. It was actually really good gameplay. I remember when I first read it as being previewed, I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It's if you have 3 poison counters, it changes a few things. Who cares? At least in terms of limited play, it wound up being a lot of fun, because it just created this whole little mini game that we were both playing, trying to. He wasn't even trying to kill me with poison. He was trying to get 3 onto me to buff all his stuff. So it actually was a lot of fun, at least in limited.
Yes.
And this set also has a couple different ways to like directly apply poison counters, like we mentioned, Venerate Rot Priest. There's also Proliferate again in this set, so you can, once you get a couple on people, you can start rolling them up. So the set's only been out a couple weeks, not even a couple weeks, like a week, and we haven't even had a standard rolling with it yet, so maybe it'll wind up being busted. But at least so far, it feels like they've kind of found that good middle ground between the original poison cards that really didn't do much and the Infect ones that probably did too much.
Yeah, they definitely found that nice median, combine the two, so you got something really weak and something really powerful, and put us right in the middle.
So do you guys have much experience doing poison/infect kind of stuff in Commander? I know, Max, you had tried a poison deck at least once years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, I've tried a couple. Did Vela for a short while. I also did original Xenagos, God of whatever.
Okay.
And I did like a Gruul Infect deck, because back then most of the Infect cards were in red and green. So I figured having a commander that pumps up one of my bigger creatures every combat, fun way to, get the 10 Infect as quick as possible. The issue back then was you're a one-trick pony. Once you eliminate one person, the other 2 are going to murder you super fast.
Yeah, I just fairly recently built Lazav Dimir Mastermind as kind of a Dimir Voltron deck, and it's not an equipment deck or an aura deck. It's just got a bunch of different weird stuff in it that buffs up my commander, and I'm running mill things too. So like, okay, I play Lazav, and then I'm gonna like hit somebody that seems like they have big creatures with a mill effect, so Lazav can turn into, hopefully that Galta they mill, but like at the very least some kind of like a 6/6 or 7/7 angel or dragon or something with evasion, and then I can buff it and swing in. And one of the things I did was like, well, since I'm doing this, I might as well throw in things like the poisonous Stake Called Initiation, or I'll put in, Graphic Exoskeleton that gives your creature Infect or something. In addition to all of the buffs and stuff, I will try a few Infect cards in there as well. Then I'm like, if I'm going to do that, maybe I'll make the creatures in the deck also Infect, so I'll put in a few of the blue and black Infect creatures. The problem I immediately ran into when I, literally the first time I played that deck was I dropped, a Plague Mirror on turn 3 or something, and then I dropped some other Infect creature on turn 4 before I played Lazav, and everyone's immediately like, oh no, Infect, kill him. And the Infect stuff wasn't that powerful in the deck, so after 2 games of experiencing that, I took all the Infect creatures out. I still have the Graphic Exoskeleton in the deck, but I took the creatures that signaled very clearly I had Infect stuff in the deck, and just replaced them with other clone effects that are probably better. And no one cares now. So I'm playing better creatures in the deck, but because they don't say Infect on them, nobody absolutely cares at all. So it's the deck is stronger than it was, and it gets way less hate because people don't see that Plague Mirror, they don't see that Blighted Agent, and they don't see the couple of Infect creatures I had in the deck, which I thought was kind of funny.
Which I do find amusing, because I don't think Infect's powerful in Commander at all, unless you have Grafted Exoskeleton or something like that. The little ones, because as Max was saying, there are X amount of other people you have to kill.
Yes.
And sure, you can take out one guy or gal, but you can't do anything else. And you're just kind of stuck there then.
I can't remember who said it or where it was. If it was on Twitter or Reddit or something, but I remember seeing someone say, it's not that you hate Infect, it's that you hate Blightsteel Colossus and Triumph of the Hordes. And I was like,
agreed.
That's kind of true, right? It's less so much that Infect or Poison in Commander is a problem so much as, at least again, prior to getting a bunch more cards this set. Maybe that'll change. But it was those particular cards that just turned it into, yeah, you hate Skittles. Okay, that's what it is. You hate a couple busted Infect cards, not so much that Poison is a problem or Infect is a problem. Those couple way over the top cards are what changes things.
Yeah, Blightsteel is definitely like number one on my radar. Like whenever I see someone playing an artifact deck, I'm just like sitting there waiting like, okay, when's Blightsteel coming? When's Blightsteel coming? It's coming at some point.
Yeah, Commander's a whole different format than like Modern, where like an absolute terror in Modern was somebody hitting that Glistener Priest with a couple of, or Glistener Elf, with a couple of different buffs. Oh no, a Giant Growth came down and something, well, I don't remember what the other ones are, but like, there was a couple different ones that they ran in that effect deck to buff the creature up. Like those were terrifying. Because you just got to take 10 poison damage and you just lost the game. It's a whole different deal when you have to deal 10 poison damage to 3 people in a format that has a lot more ramp and a lot more removal and a lot more in different kinds of chaotic things happening. So like, yeah, Infect is much different, again, prior to this current set. Maybe that's going to change, than it is in in those older formats.
Yes. Now, if you run into a deck like an Atraxa deck and then they're dropping a bunch of Infect stuff, then I would be more worried because you know immediately that they're in the colors that are perfect for Infect.
Yep.
Followed by a commander that just proliferates on its own. So obviously they're going to have all the other proliferate cards.
Right.
And all they're trying to do is just get you with one. And then they can sit back, protect themselves, and just be like, proliferate this and proliferate that, and then just kill you out of nowhere.
And it interacts with that Ajani Sleeper agent that puts poison counters on people and stuff like that too, yeah.
Sure does.
And Atraxa has always been kind of a terrifying commander in general, and this gives Atraxa even more tools, so we'll see if that winds up being a thing.
And
so
they just reprinted Atraxa too in the set, so I mean, it's not like... Yeah.
So the kind of discourse this week, people are talking about poison. I guess kind of the last thing we'll talk about here, at least up until now, based on what we've seen, and this is all subject to change because who knows over the course of the next month or two how these cards will play out. Sometimes you don't realize how strong a thing is until you actually like get a bunch of reps with it. Do you guys think 10 poison counters in Commander is something they need to look at? Start with you, Max. Or do you think they might need to look to buff that up to something higher?
No, 10 is fine. Play better. Like, I'm sorry, just play better. Like, it's an option to lose that way. And yeah, like we said, they're hard to remove from you once you have one, but it's not that hard to realize if player number 4 is the Infect player. Use the politics of the game, of the multiplayer format, team up on them, and make sure they don't get rid of any of the other players in the pod. You could do the reverse as well. Use that player to get rid of the bigger threat, then everybody else turn on the poison counter person. I don't think it needs to be raised. I think the amount of times people use it as their main way to win is far less than, those super strong combo decks or just, the flood the board with 1,000 goblins. I play against those type of decks way more often than the dedicated poison Infect decks. So 10 is perfectly fine.
How about you, Chris? What do you think?
I would like to see it raised, but not the way that people are probably thinking what I mean. I want to see it raised to 11. And just for the simple fact of it follows the commander damage rule then too, which is, 21.
An odd number.
Yeah, just the one extra type of damage just because it follows instead of, an even number type of thing, which is like impossible to do because
right. Because all the cards say if you get 10 or more,
Yeah. But I mean, I think that would be better if it was just like some like unwritten rule, like, no, it's 11 in commander.
Sure.
I also think though, like, that you made a great point. There are tons of cards that say, if you have 10 or more, you lose the game.
Right.
We didn't change the rule for, like, Felidar Sovereign. Like, you have to have 40 or more life. Like, we didn't change the rule for that card. Why are we going to change the rule for 30 cards, 40 cards?
True.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And again, I'll make this point for like the third time. We're a week in. Absolutely, stuff is difficult to pick out, and maybe in 3 weeks we'll look back and be like, "Oh, wow, yeah, this stuff was way stronger than I realized." And we didn't even get into the fact that like there's a commander precon deck that's based around Infect now that gives a couple tools. The commander works really well with Infect, and like so maybe that stuff will wind up being an issue. And I am open to that possibility. I'm not like 100% being like this is definitely not going to be a problem because we just have not got enough games that like. like I used when like I mentioned with the example where when I talked about Corrupted, it's one of those things that I didn't realize how fun it was and how cool it was until I actually got to play it. Some of this stuff you don't realize the power level until you get to play it too. So like I'm not being dismissive of the possibility, but from where I sit right now, I just don't think it'll be an issue. And people also tend to kind of get bored of stuff that's a little bit too easy sometimes too. Like Chris mentioned why he didn't run Virulent Sliver in his Sliver deck because it felt like it was too easy. That also could be a thing that happens too, where like if people are just doing too much of it, maybe they'll do it a couple times and get bored of it, and it'll not be an issue because of that reason too. So I'm also leaning on the side of it's probably not going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think it would be more fun to build it as Corrupted than as like poisonous or toxic or anything like that. So your whole goal is to just get 3 on each person. So you're running a minimal amount of stuff that creates poison counters, but you're running an exponential amount of cards that are corrupted. Yeah. So then you're trying to walk that fine line. I think that would be more fun to try to do.
What I'm going to guess winds up happening is people that I think the same thing's going to happen that we mentioned about like you just don't like Triumph of the Hordes and Skithrix and Blightsteel Colossus. The same thing will happen. Someone will build their toxic deck and it'll be filled with poisonous creatures, but they'll just top deck that Triumph of the Hordes or Blightsteel Colossus often enough and kill people with that, and people will be like, "Oh, this deck is so frustrating to play against." And like once again, no, it's just annoying playing against the Blightsteel Colossus.
Right.
So I think those will still be the problem. Will still be the problem cards versus the mechanic. I think, but I guess we'll see.
I got to say, I play Triumph of the Hordes in one deck, and I've cast it probably half a dozen times, and I've never had anyone complain about it because I am attacking you with 1/2 spiders that get +1/+0 and Infect, and they're like, really?
in realistically too, for the most part, like Triumph of the Hordes kills you. If Triumph of the Hordes kills you, Overwhelming Stampede probably would kill you at the same time, and so would Crater Hoof Behemoth, and so would Overrun, and so would half a dozen other things that do a similar effect. So like that's Triumph. I 100% agree. Blightsteel is annoying. I think Skithrix is annoying. I've killed plenty of folks with Tainted Strikes before, particularly when someone else's creature's attacking. Like someone swings at somebody else for like an 11/11, they're like, "I'll take it," and I'm like, "Or you'll die." That's annoying too. But yeah, I think those will wind up being much more the problem in the end. Same thing. Like Triumph is just going to kill you the same way that Crater Hoof's going to kill you. I totally agree with that.
Yep. And I think every deck needs a win con like that.
Absolutely.
And if it's something that's going to overall try to kill the entire board, then I'm fine with it, compared to, like you're saying, Blightsteel. It's usually just a one-person KO type of thing. And then the next person in line is like, "Oh, deglamour that thing, get it out of here. We're not playing that game."
Yeah, if someone's killing you with the Triumph of the Hordes, or killing the table with the Triumph of the Hordes, you've let them put 14 creatures into play or something. Like they've had to get into that position. Whereas at least like Blightsteel, you can drop it and put Greaves on it and just kill somebody out of the blue. Triumph of the Hordes really doesn't tend to work that way. If they're killing you with it, they've clearly established a board presence. And so, yeah. Any final thoughts here before we wrap this up?
Yay, really. More of it. Like that's where I am. It's like, yay, it's more of it. And, I think it's going to come down to eventually there's going to be enough tools where we're either going to see the same 20 cards in every deck, or we're going to see people go back and run, Marsh Viper and stuff like that.
Snake Cult Initiation. Yeah.
They want to be cool versus I want to run all these new cards from All Will Be One.
It will probably actually, I'm going to guess, get a few more of these things in the March of the Machines. Is that the next one?
Yeah.
So we'll probably get some more stuff like this, or at least some more stuff that interacts with it. Whether it's a different even version of a poison mechanic, or more of the same, or some different version of whatever. So we might have one more wave of this stuff coming. But yeah, it's an interesting time to be playing Commander for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, hey Chris, one last time, welcome back to the show. Glad to have you back for these last couple episodes, man.
Well, thank you.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up episode 348. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back not next week, but the week after. We're probably going to do these last couple of shows in an every other week format. Thank you very much to Rafael Garcia. You can find them on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker. They edit our show and do a fantastic job. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. I am Dana. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at Wise Squishy 1. We will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.